think it doesn't get better, but it does.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know that feeling. All right. Let's call the order of the special meeting for the Chapter City Council Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. The record show all members of the council are present, and I'm asking for approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve agenda as read. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. We have public comment. If anyone has any public comment not related to this agenda and wants to come forward, this is your time. Good. Well, we'll move on to management reports.
Hi, Mayor and Council, this is an informational workshop based on the community workshop we had on November 29th regarding SB 1383. And so from that workshop and subsequent to the workshop on social media, we received additional comments, questions, concerns from residents about the service. And so we did prepare a list of the questions that we had received, forwarded it to them. That generated additional due diligence on the to conduct and working with American Refuse, both Linda and Jeff Martin. We're able to conduct that additional due diligence, and so the purpose of this workshop this evening is to share that with you. The number one topic that you'll hear that came up was related to the LE service, the possibility of basically eliminating the LE pickup and going to curbside was probably the number one concern that we heard from residents. So we'll be able to provide additional information on that itself, and then some of the other key questions that kind of rose to the top in terms of some of the more common themes. So with that, Mike has a presentation for you, and then we also have, like I said, both Linda and Jeff with American Refuse to provide additional insight and input related to the operation from the operator side.
Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, members of the Chapter City Council, Michael James, Director of Public Works. Going to be making a brief presentation to open this public workshop, which is going to cover SB 1383 compliance. Tonight, we're joined by Public Works Manager Kevin Gibson. He oversees the current core city residential refuse operation. And we're also joined by representatives of American Refuse. As you know, American Refuse submitted a proposal to provide the mandated 3-cart program that'll help us achieve 1383 compliance. So I'm gonna, I should point out that our guests were very instrumental in working with Public Works and myself to develop the 1383 compliance plan. And I'm gonna rely pretty heavily on their input and perspective tonight. The purpose of this workshop is through this presentation, summarize the current action plan, the public feedback received in response to that plan, but also offer some responses to the feedback and some suggested updated timelines and strategies for compliance. And at the conclusion of the presentation, we're going to open it up to discussion, and hopefully at the conclusion of the discussion, we'll have some feedback and possibly direction from the council going into calendar year 2022. The following slide is just a summary of the strategy that was presented at a public workshop conducted on November 30th. As we all know, the state's mandating a 3-cart program citywide. As the city manager pointed out, the topic of debate, really the reason why we're here, is the proposal to discontinue alley service and go curbside throughout the city, core city in as well as Gossamer Grove, which already has 3-carts program. Less controversial, but also noteworthy is through American's proposal, they're proposing a single-day pickup for all containers, all core city residents, and the precise pickup day will depend on the service location. But that's and then it will also require the residents to prior to their collection day, source separating the material and breaking materials down and putting them in the appropriate containers. Also, a topic of some discussion and debate is the city's proposal with the implementation of these new programs is to discontinue the annual brush program. This is a summary of the public feedback that we received mostly through the public workshop. Categorized at top for obvious reasons is the discontinuing of the alley service. At the workshop, residents expressed concerns about the ability to move containers to the front or the curb, whether it was too heavy or whether their house was really built to allow for container access from the backyard to the front yard. Moving on to street service, assuming that's what the city implements, residents express concern about street parking, specifically parking blocking a refuse truck's ability to access a container and that container not being collected. They also expressed questions or asked about the policy for storing the container, assuming the street service is enacted. Moving on to equity of service, some residents questioned whether they were getting less service for more money with the proposal. And then they also asked if they have the ability to request additional containers if the 3 set of containers that they're allotted isn't sufficient. Moving on to special programs and services, some are existing, some are proposed. Some residents asked about the status of the current public drop-off facility at East Ash Avenue. And of course, they expressed concern and disappointment that the annual brush program would be discontinued with this current action plan. One resident in particular asked about the ability to take CRV materials to buyback centers. And then with regard to American Refuge's proposed curbside weekly bulky waste collection, one resident in particular expressed concern about that program potentially being abused by residents and then being inundated with bulky waste and it becoming an eyesore. Finally, with regard to the schedule, the basic questions are, when will the council consider formal approval of these changes? And if it's approved, how soon will it go into effect? Now, the following is I should say that following the public comment or the public feedback that was received on November 30th, city staff, along with American Refuge, revisited the feasibility of alley service, 3-car alley service. And as of right now, we're still of the opinion that it doesn't meet all of the city's 1383 compliance needs. Beyond the mandate, alley customers have always had an issue with the equity of their service, specifically getting the waste capacity that they're paying for. Currently with shared containers, as I'm sure you've heard, and we certainly have heard it at Public Works, is that certain residents can abuse their portion of the shared containers. And even with individual containers in the alleys, unless residents are very vigilant about putting the containers, securing it or putting it behind the fence after a collection, we feel that this is going to continue to be a problem. Now, as far as the mandate itself, what may not have been conveyed effectively enough at the public workshop is there's more to this mandate than just providing a container and picking it up. The state is very concerned about landfilling organic waste and contamination in general. So much to the point that they've dictated policies and procedures for all municipalities to follow to ensure that contamination is minimized. This and unlike past mandates, recycling mandates, diversion mandates, whatever you want to call them, where the city had the flexibility to come up with their own programs to meet compliance. And we've done that successfully, but with SB 1383, they've basically taken that flexibility away from us. So there's an enforcement angle to this mandate that we have to uphold. And with alley service, the number of containers in an alley is going to increase by a factor of 9. There's going to be 3 containers for each customer, and times 3. So that's where I'm coming up with a factor of 9. So with 9 containers, presumably stacked on one side of an alley, Public Works is of the opinion, and I believe American Refuse can attest to this, is that it's going to be extremely difficult for whomever is enforcing this, whether it's American Refuse or whether it's code enforcement or whether it's Public Works, to identify the source of the contamination, let alone work directly with the source of that contamination to fix it. So we have serious concerns about enforcement. And if we fail at enforcing, we're also subject to state scrutiny and possible fines if we don't meet the state's objectives. Moving beyond enforcement, there's quality and safety of service issues with the alley. Now, we already know that alleys are pretty tight spaces to navigate if you're driving a car, let alone a refuse truck. And so you can imagine the increase in containers from like by a factor of 9, that space just becomes that much more tighter to navigate. And today's modern refuse truck is significantly taller and heavier than they used to be. And I provided kind of a visual of just some of the obstacles these trash trucks are going to have to navigate. Tree limbs, and to more serious concern is overhead utility service lines. And we feel that not every alley is the same, but there are alleys where utility lines are going to be a challenge right from day one. So, and of course, you can imagine alleys versus streets. You have limited visibility and lighting, and even the police department raised a concern about the increased likelihood of scavenging, presumably with the blue car container, if containers are left in the alley versus the street. And Mr. Gibson can attest to this. As long as there's containers in the alley, the likelihood of illegal dumping is going to increase. And we've seen this firsthand with alley customers, comparing alley customers that have alley collection versus curbside collection. We actually have already converted alley customers from shared containers to curbside containers, mostly for logistical reasons, not necessarily for SB 1383. And what we've witnessed firsthand is by giving people individual containers and taking containers out of the alley altogether, illegal dumping has decreased dramatically. Now, moving on to street collections and the concerns specifically about street collections. As far as moving the containers go, it's been our experience, and I think the experience of other residents that Americans services in other communities, is that they're fairly easy to move, even when fully loaded and on uneven surfaces. As far as storing the containers, well, the municipal code dictates that they have to basically be stored out of sight when it's not your pickup day. But in recognizing that alley customers are going to have logistical challenges if they're converted to curbside container, the council could consider relaxing that requirement and allow those impacted customers some time to adapt. And as far as street parking goes, I mean, American has studied the city streets extensively in anticipation of submitting this proposal. And they have extensive experience servicing communities in other areas that have street parking. And they are fairly convinced, as far as I know, that they're not going to have any, they don't anticipate any street parking challenges. If we have chronic street parking challenges, then code enforcement, public works can take steps to alleviate that. And it's worth noting that Gossamer Grove, and we've all seen Gossamer Grove, and I think we all might reach the conclusion that those streets are fairly narrow, and those driveways, everything is fairly tight in there as far as parking goes. There's been 3-car curbside container there from day one, and we have not been aware of any significant challenges with container access and street parking. And finally, we have and I'm sure, I won't speak for American Refuge, but I'm sure they would much rather navigate a street with parking than an alley with trees and utility lines. And then finally, we have the benefit of experiences of other cities. I mean, they've vetted best management practice, and some cities have probably been through the exact same, have already been through what we're about to encounter here. And so And American has seen that firsthand, and we can benefit from their experience. Moving on to the equity of rates. To your right, the right of the slide is a comparison of the proposed core city rates, assuming curbside service. The proposed rate is $26.45 a month. You might wonder why, and this was discussed at the public workshop, why alley customers currently pay significantly less. And it's been proven that shared container collections is a lot more efficient way of collecting refuse than individual containers, because the truck is working that much harder and lifting its arms so many more times, to the point where, you know, it takes longer and costs more to service curbside containers, which is why the curbside containers currently pay significantly more. But with SB 1383, the state's taking away that efficiency away from us, essentially. And just in comparison, you know, Gossamer Grow, which has curbside service, is currently paying $26.62, which is pretty compatible with the proposed rate for the core city. And the reason why it shows to be determined for 2022 is that we don't have a confirmed rate for Gossamer Grow factoring in SB 1383 compliance, but it's going to be at least $26.62 per month. So as far as the rate of $26.45 per month, just to be clear, that rate covers servicing of 3 containers. There were some questions as to whether it was $26.45 per container. That's for 3 containers every month. And just by comparison, the volume collected for the trash only service in the core city comes out to about 720 gallons per month versus 960 gallons per month approximately for the 3-cart service. Now, admittedly, it's not apples to apples. I mean, and the residents are going to have to source separate. And if they have additional container needs, they can get additional containers, but there will be a charge because they're getting more of a benefit. And they will still need to source separate. As far as the special programs go, we feel that we have viable alternatives to an annual brush program. That other cities in the county have been sufficient for other cities, all cities in the county, essentially. You know, the residents have access to the Shafter-Wasco landfill, which is approximately 5 miles away from the core city. They can self-haul large items as needed, and they should not be assessed a processing charge at the landfill. For smaller items that can be broken down, they have the benefit of an organics waste container that they could use on a weekly basis. Now, with regard to the concern about American Refuge's proposed weekly curbside bulky waste item collection, American Refuge wanted me to stress that this is going to be by appointment only, and it's going to be managed pretty effectively and regulated. But if for some reason we're inundated and we kind of lose it, it becomes overwhelming for them or us to manage, we can scale that back to monthly or as needed. But as of right now, they're very confident that with the app and maybe even maybe people could call to schedule the service, they'll have a pretty good handle on the bulky waste collections. And for the public drop-off center at East Ash, the city Public Works Department doesn't see any problem keeping that open, provided contamination is minimized, because we see the benefit in allowing residents to get rid of maybe large-scale recyclable items that maybe can't fit in their blue container. And then as far as CRV materials go, there's nothing that requires that they have to go in a blue cart that American services. They're free to take that to a buyback center, but doesn't mean that they can avoid getting a blue cart container, but they have the option of taking CRV materials that have some monetary value and to take advantage of that. Finally, for council consideration, this is a updated plan of action. Ultimately, staff recommends that we work towards 3-cart citywide, curbside 3-cart citywide. We're proposing to use this month to obviously through this workshop to receive council feedback and direction. Moving into January next month, we reference state mandated 1383 ordinance. That's really not negotiable. Fortunately, we think we can adopt an ordinance that doesn't commit to a certain service type. We just have to agree to work towards 1383 compliance. And we think the time to act on that is now. And we need to put ourselves in a position ultimately to have that fully in effect by March or April of next year. If we're in a position to move forward with the franchise award, we could do that as early as January. Regardless, we think it would be a good idea to have a second public workshop, share some of this additional information that we're presenting today in any direction that we receive from you. And then as soon as we can have a Prop 218 protest hearing is March to consider formal adoption of the new fees and programs, which means that the rollout of the 3-cart service could be as early as April. And in consideration of the feedback that we've received about potential hardships with container placement in the street for alley customers in particular, we're suggesting that the council consider a transitional period for alley customers in particular, focus the initial rollout on those who have existing curbside containers. A transitional period could consist of a year. This is all subject to state approval, by the way. But we realistically think the best we could hope for is a 1-year transition period. And we're pretty confident that the state would ultimately support that, particularly if you adopt the state mandated ordinance and commit to ultimately becoming 1383 compliant. And during that transitional period, the alley customers can continue to benefit from a shared container, the status quo basically. We haven't fully vetted this, but we suspect that American Refuse might need to be the franchise hauler collecting that shared container on an interim basis. We're still evaluating the feasibility of that. But in recognition of the concerns and the issues people have expressed, we would think it would be prudent to allow up to a year for these impacted alley customers to make adjustments so they can be better prepared for the curbside container or curbside service. So that concludes the summary of where we're at and where we think we need to go. And I'll open it up to questions, both directed to me and to the team of people we have here from American Refuse.
My first question on the shared container, that would be throughout all of the alleys?
The
Transition.
right. I think up to a year. I don't think we could. I think we would probably have to prioritize alleys that could be transitioned sooner, but it could be up to a year. So we would put all alley customers in the same category, not have them subject to curbside container right off the bat. And then within that transition period, work towards gradually transitioning everyone over.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I have any objection to it. I just wonder what the negatives are. What are the negatives to try to do that? I mean, we're going to have a lot of complaints back because transitioning. I mean,
One potential complaint would be from the existing curbside container customers.
yeah.
Like, why are we the ones that have to be subjected to this first? And so we have to be prepared to answer that. And we have, I think the justification would be, well, these customers some have legitimate access issues to get the container to the front yard. And there's just more time that we need to spend to work through those issues.
So in the transition of a year, once we finish that year, say it's April to April, then what are we going to do? Have you talked about that too, as to how we would deal with that? I mean, would you just automatically go out and cite them, or are we going to make sure that everybody's ready?
I believe
I don't know if it's been done anywhere else that there's a model or a case study that shows that, but, and I don't have a problem with it. I think it's important that we do uniform throughout the city. And if we're going to offer that, I think it's a plus to some of these people that have a big concern about it. And well, even I personally would have a concern because I have to fix up something to accommodate those 3 cans. You know, so I understand the transitional could be a positive. And it shows that we are willing to work with people so that they have that additional time. Yeah. You know, I don't know if it's time to ask any questions or if council has something they want to say first, but you know, I'd like to know if you've had any issues in other places and how you dealt with it. Did you do a transitional there too? And
Jeff Martin, American Refuse. Are you talking about going from alleyway to curbside
well, and now
Or just
allowing
going
this
from
extra
to-
time.
to ramp up? Time, I mean, they say time heals all, right?
Yeah.
We have a very unique situation here. And I was
Okay.
explaining this to staff earlier today. In most cities, we're getting ready for 1383. We're going from a 2-can system to adding on that additional 3rd. And then we're working on the enforcement and training all the folks of the organics that they can put in the container and working on the education and outreach to them.
Mhm.
Here, this is a little different model. We're at 0 right now. We're doing 0 recycling.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who are participating, who are doing a good job, who do some type of recycling. And those aren't really the people that I think we're gonna have to worry about. I think there's a lot of folks out there that we're really gonna have to educate, that we're really going to have to spend time with and train, that it's gonna take a lot of trial and error through the containers, finding the contaminants, having somebody there, having somebody to talk to them, showing them the photos. It's gonna be quite the process. We have a really heavy lift to get compliant. What makes this even more challenging is the alleyway curbside. You know, not only going from, you know, alleyway where it's kind of a free for all right now, but to get somebody curbside, there's just a lot of problems. There's a lot of challenges, I should say. We're really excited about it, although this does sound like a daunting task. We couldn't be more excited. A lot of our staff live here in town and we can't wait to pick up our own material. But it's a process and it takes time. And I wish we had 5 years to transition. I wish I could give everybody a trash can first and get everybody used to going in front of their house. And then in another year, give you an organics can. And then in another year, give you a blue can. If you look at Bakersfield's last transition that they did is, if you remember, it was pretty big news in the newspaper where they went to a recycling can and they said, it's free. And how could people complain it was free, right? And they took over a year to roll it out and people got used to it. And then after 3 years, we have to pay for it. There was a downturn in the recycling market. So it ended up coming around to where people have to pay for it, but now it's mandated and it just took time. So to me, the more time we have to transition folks, the better off we are. The smaller amount that we transition, the smaller amount of people that we transition at a time is better. You know, it'll limit staff's time, people calling them, complaining, and also learning from the problems that we do have. So I do think it's good that we take more time to do it, but also it will have, Cal Recycle will have a lot to play with this. I mean, a lot to weigh in on us. Cal Recycle, and they've said this to us in meetings. They said, you know, you guys are the last ones. You know, you've gotten away for a long time being able to not have any type of recycling programs throughout your city.
It's true. Because
the city has been fantastic at finding other programs that work in meeting the AB 939 mandates. But that's come to an end now, and now we have to do this. And so, believe me, they have their list, and we're up there in the top of they'll be watching it.
But you know, part of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of it, we have worked with the younger people in the programs that you've done. So the families are not totally out of it. And I don't know that anyone is complaining or has issues with the fact of getting cans, and it's just making that transition, because I'm not even sure I would put the right thing in the one can versus another can, whatever. And, you know, I will have to learn that, whether I can read it or I get, you know, someone tells me, hey, you know what, you can't do that part, you got to put it over here. So it is a transition. And when I see this compliance word over and over and over, I mean, we are going to have to do it. But I think a lot of our people should already be on board. I think they're ready. It's just trying to deal with these alleys and.
Well, yeah, when we look at census information,
Mhm.
when we start compiling all the information and how we're going to construct our program and outreach, you know, Shafter, 30% of the folks, the population are under the age of 18. So I'm counting that a lot of them have gone through school recently and they're probably at home wondering, man, when are we going to get
Mhm.
that green container and look at these items that we're just throwing away that shouldn't be thrown away.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do see that, but nevertheless, we are going to have some challenges. There's a lot of wish cycling, you know. Well, one thing that's important is we need to be at less than 10% of traceable in our containers in 2024. We need to be less than 10%. We're going to go from 0
Mhm.
to less than 10%. That's a big lift. We have a lot of work to do. So, and we have a lot of education. I know a lot of people, they do a lot of wish cycling and that's great. I'm glad they're thinking, but we need to get everybody trained and informed on what goes where and the best things for it. The other thing is, this is state mandated, but think of it as we're managing a resource, you know. Right now, we take all this material and we send it to a landfill, which I don't think will ever be recovered. You know, we're looking at taking more than 40 to 60% of what we're throwing away now and turning it into a resource. So we're not, it is going to take a lot. It is going to take a lot of work. It is going to cost a little more money, but we're using better management practices of the resource.
Yeah, I don't see approach that they're going to be so tough on us. I mean, we've worked with Cal Recycle before and, you know, I think you have too. And so those have to be pluses. At least we haven't just turned our head away and not listened. And we've tried to make those adjustments. So that should be on our side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mayor Proudy, Mr. Martin is correct, though. Cal
Yeah.
Recycle has zeroed their sights on communities like Shafter that have been able to, you know, progressively and creatively come up with diversion programs. But
Mhm.
it's really similar to the situation we're in is really similar to Mayor Pro Tem Gibbons can relate to this when it comes to the SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. The whole point of coming up with a plan is to keep the state out of your water operation and keep them from managing it for you.
Right.
And this is the same type of effort. We don't want Cal Recycle. We want to minimize the number of visits as far as scrutinizing our operation and calling into question our efforts and otherwise, you know, and they can attest because they being American Refuge can attest because they've worked with other cities where Cal Recycle is there on a regular basis, scrutinizing everything, sometimes showing up unannounced and
Yeah, they'll know who's.
blindsiding people.
Yeah,
And fortunately, our visits have been limited to once a year, and we've been pretty fortunate that we've had partnerships with American Refuge at this point to where we could address all of their concerns
Right.
and requirements.
Good.
I think there's education, obviously, that has to happen. I don't think we're gonna have the biggest hiccup with trying to figure out what goes where. It'll click and we'll be able to work with it. My concern isn't really a trash can in the front versus an alley either. My concern is the fact that we do have people, and I don't know the number, who have to modify something in the front to be able to make it work. I have family, my mother-in-law and father-in-law specifically, who don't have a driveway in the front. They have nothing in the front. It is a house and grass. So they're going to modify something to actually take the carts and put them somewhere and move them out to the front, right? So those are, that's a example. I know there's more than a example out there. So the question is, what are the modifications that we're needing to do? I pulled a map up of Gossamer. They have a side run, so they're putting their cans on the side. That makes a lot of sense. Newer homes that we're seeing have a lot of side runs. That makes sense on why they're doing it. They have a way to get the cart from point A to point B, and there's obviously a drive approach where they can just take it out into the street. Great. That's not the case with a lot of homes, especially when they were built with an alley. So my question is how many homes have to be modified? What is that going to cost to modify? And why are we going to ask the resident to modify their home to meet this ordinance? That's where I have a struggle. My struggle is not so much to say, let's move it from alley to front, done. Some can do it, some can't. The problem is the ones who can't. What is happening at that point? I think you're in the same boat, by the way.
Mhm.
You don't have an access in your front. Yours is all alley based. Are you alley? Yeah, you have the same problem then too, don't you? So it's, you see what I mean? I'm just throwing this out there, but each and every one of these people that we're talking about have to modify something. Maybe it's a $20 modification, rip some dirt out, put some gravel in, life's great. Maybe it's a multi-$1,000 modification. I don't know, but I just don't see that that's fair that we're asking the residents to do that. I get it. We're not the ones mandating it. But we should also try to figure a way to soften that blow.
We're giving them a year.
Well, I'm going to give you a year to find the money to spend it so you can get in compliance, so we don't have to fine you after a year. No, that doesn't even make any sense to me why we even have that conversation. So that's where I'm struggling at.
Anybody else?
I fall in the same boat. I would have to do modifications to my gates to fit one of those through. And then,
I don't even have.
because I have a swimming pool that probably takes up 45% of the backyard, it's very small, and those are bulky. So, I mean, I understand the mandate. I understand, we got to work something out here. I'm just letting you know, I'm in that same boat, it's not a good fit for me.
So that's where I struggle, right? And again, this is not about trying to keep an alley service, because I know there's a list of people on the agenda that are all into that alley service. I'm one of them. I would like to keep my alley service. That's personal opinion. Homes are not built the same as they were then, right? They're built and I'm building housing tracts as we speak. They're built purposefully to have a side run for this situation. I have homes that are built that do not have any gate access. They're built to have a storage of trash containment on the side of the house. So they can pull it out to the front. I think actually you guys manage that area too. So that's what it's meant for. We do not build homes like that any longer. Or we don't have homes that are built like we have in the past. And that's where we have this really weird conundrum, right? We've got a new and an old that are really collided together. And I don't know if it's a 50-50 split. I don't know if it's a 70-30 where 70 new homes, 30% of old. I don't know. But I just don't know how. I'm still struggling on the why do we have to make those modifications for it? That's where I'm at.
I share your frustration, and I understand, Chad, and other members of the council. I think I understand there's nothing we can do about your homes. There's really nothing we can do it. The success of our program, and like I said, if we were looking at a different time, if time was not of the essence, if we had no push for time, I'm sure we could work through some of these issues and come up with a longer time frame. But granted, we're being asked the task to go from 0 to 100 in a very short amount of time frame, and we need to do it citywide. And so nothing's to say that you're not going to do a perfect job, nor anybody else on this council. But with our experiences, people normally don't. A lot of people have a certain amount of resentment towards change or new types of things. And it's very hard for us to work on enforcement or outreach and education going through the alleyways. I mean, there's a lot of challenges, a lot of challenges. It's almost easy to say to take on this task and for it to be a success is going to be impossible doing it in the alleyway. Getting that type of education and outreach and holding folks accountable. And the thing is, like, I get it. The folks that I'm sure that they're probably on the right page and they want to do the up and up, but there's a lot of them that don't.
Right.
There's a lot more people out there than you that don't really care, that we're going to have to work with. There's a lot of people that are probably really going to be challenged when the 300 gallon cans get picked up of where they're going to start throwing away all their stuff. And it's not just a residential. I mean, we deal with it on a commercial end. We are constantly working with commercial customers here in the city to make sure they lock their bins, to make sure they're in a safe place and keeping them from getting burnt. It's an ongoing task. I mean, we had a major issue on Monday of a facility that had 4 times the amount of trash than what they normally have, that someone came and just dumped it all out in front of their containers. So it's happening and it's nonstop. Is this going to fix everything? You know, I can't guarantee that. But when we look at our issues and what we are trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, and to put out all these carts in the alleyway and us being efficient and being able to inspect all these cans, which is what we're gonna have to do. I mean, we're not just inspecting the green waste can, we're inspecting the recycle can, and we're also inspecting the trash can. We're supposed to work on getting 40% of the organics out of the trash can and over to the organics. And the folks that may not live here or may not have a dog in the fight are the ones that could spoil it for a lot of people. You know, just think of now, you used to spread out all your trash between 300 gallon cans, and now you've got to spread it out through 24 cans. And do you care of what they go in, or you just dump it in the alleyway? So I see that, but all of it, no matter what, like, we're going to have a challenge and we're going to have a cost associated with it. But for us as the hauler, and for us to look at success and what does success look like and what is it going to take us to get there, trying to keep the whole city in the alleyway isn't going to work.
See, let me just chime in here just a little bit. I guess the question is about the alleys, right? Not using the alleys, which I really believe, but if we had to go to 3 cart containers and using the alleys, what I see and looking at one of these pictures, I could see all these little trash cans all over throughout the whole alley. It'd be like a maze trying to get through. Where you could have them in the front, where the homeowner or the renter is now forced to put that thing back. They have it in the alleys, out of sight, out of mind, and those trash cans will be all over the place, especially those small ones. So that's why I wouldn't want them in the alley. But is it convenience? Yes. But I don't think it'd be controllable. The other part, just want to share with you, Jeff, it's not your fault we're in this situation. I think the city should have got ahead of this lot years back. Just as the same experience we had with the raising the water. We didn't raise the water, I believe, for 10 years. And then it came to a time we had to raise it. Now the constituents and the people of Chapter were just shocked. Why is my water rate going up? Okay, so this is something we just got to do, like it or not. Now, I think the proposed, I mean, I don't like change either, but I think just the fact that we had to make some adjustments, given that the fact that those that have alley service, just like myself, giving us a year, you know, the cost saving is only $116. I mean, you know, what do we want? Do we want $1,000 adjustment just to modify our yard? I don't know. I'm not sure what it's going to take. But the fact is that, you know, it's something we have to do, like it or not. And I think by proposing putting them in the alley, it's not going to be a good idea. I could just see kids going through the alleys, scattering them all over the place, and cars can't get through. The bigger ones, it was a lot harder to move those. Now, if you had three huge ones like we have right now in the alley, that everybody put then I think, okay, that's fair. But I don't think that could happen. I guess that's not an option. But, you know, the only way we're gonna get control of this is having these 3 small containers is in the front yard. I don't like it. But it's gonna force me to get off my car and put them back in my yard. So, but it's just something that I think the city as a whole should have tackled this years back. Like you said earlier, if we saw this coming years ahead, maybe starting off with 1 trash can once a year, just to get the adjustment. But now, hey, we got short window to get all this thing fixed. And now here it is. So now the option is we don't give the latitude of folks a 1 year, which we could probably, we don't have to, maybe perhaps we don't have to say, well, this is the law. This is from the state. By this time, you have to make your arrangements. But the fact that we're trying to give a year's latitude, I think that's a blessing itself. That's all I have to say.
I don't know. It's a question about organics, and I have a funny feeling she's going to get so excited to want to answer this question. So I'm already pointing at her, not to be mean, Jeff, There's someone here who loves trash more than you. It might be her. So when it comes to organics in this green trash can, and give me some edification, just so we have an idea of what this is. This is not just, my green grass or my brush. This is my half-eaten apple, potentially a bag of carrots that I chose not to eat, right? I'm using those terms purposely. All that goes into this green waste. And what you're talking about on that separation is I think most people, and I'm one of them, in my house, I have two containers. I have a recycles and I have a trash. What you're saying is in my house, I would probably need a third container, which is a trash. I know, I see where you're going, a trash, an organics food waste, and a recycles. My organics food waste, can I put it in a bag or do I have to, that's what you're gonna do. Why do you gotta do that?
In the kitchen,
And it's
So we bought-
dishwasher safe.
Yeah.
I've already been down this way.
Oh my God. It stinks so bad, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, so we have these for residents. They're meant to go on the counter. I have played with these for the last probably 10 years.
See what I mean? It was her instead of
I
you talking. I knew
like
that was gonna happen.
This particular one, because they have ones that have holes on it. I don't want my greenhouse gas, whatever, I don't want that happening in my kitchen. These have held up the best. So this is meant for the counter. And yes, you put your food scraps in it. So when you clean out your fridge, when you,
So it's not a plastic bag that we've been throwing away forever.
from what I have seen in other cities that have done this, so you can't use a plastic bag, you have to use the bio bag. I would prefer, if we can, I understand where we're going with this, the smell and things like that. What I do is I put a little paper towel here on the bottom and I put my food waste in, it all comes in, dumps out in my green can really easily. You can flip this over, you can stick it in your dishwasher. And I'm not saying let this sit here for a whole week and not take it out. I usually take it out every day or every other day. So it doesn't smell, but and I know people get grossed out that you're gonna put this in your dishwasher, but it just came off your plate. So you're gonna put your dirty plate in the dishwasher. So this can go in there. Like I have one that's been sitting on my counter for 3 years and it's still in good shape. You have all the little items that you can put in. We don't want any utensils or glass. Why I would rather residents not use the bio bag is they cost more. And I've been to facilities up north that the bio bag just creates another trash problem. Because they have to then send it through a machine that, it tears the bag apart. And the thing with food is it's acidic. So they've actually had to go and replace the mechanisms to stainless steel. So to avoid that second trash problem, I think it's always better to just put a little paper towel. Sometimes if you go to a restaurant, you get extra napkins. I just put it in the bottom. I'm not going to use them, so I try and recycle that. So this is meant to go on the counter, and yes, your food waste will go in your green waste. The state wants all the organic waste out of the landfill. They did their waste characterization or landfill characterization studies, and 40% of what they found in landfill is the food waste and the green waste. And that's why they've seen how much food waste comes in actually. And, part of this is the edible food recovery by 2025, state mandated 20%. So I think this is what kind of stirred them with this idea of how much food Americans waste, unfortunately.
Eat your vegetables, kids.
What is that green can gonna be like when it's 110 outside all week long?
Okay, so I know that people don't like change, but you're putting your food waste in your trash can now.
It gets dumped twice a week.
True. But I would recommend what I do at home is
Okay, hold on. At home, it does get thrown in the trash, but at home, it gets thrown
In a
into a tall trash bag, which is tied and then thrown in the container. But you're saying we're gonna empty that into that, and then it's gonna be picked up once a week.
If it's
you,
full.
you are allowed to use a bio bag. It's in the regulations. The bio bags are allowed at the facilities. I just personally find it easier not to use the bio bags because I have seen the other trash problem it causes. I'm not saying
Creates another
you
problem.
can't, and I understand food waste. It's a tricky situation, right? I mean, I want to do a lot of public outreach, and this is why I do this in my own home, is because I want to know the ins and outs. Do my kids love taking out this little guy? No, not all the time. You know, but we try and I have to follow the rules, right? I can't be a hypocrite. So I do use this in my home. And the good thing about Kern is that you are allowed to put soiled paper products in your green. I work in other jurisdictions where you are not allowed. So up north, they're not even allowed to put a pizza box with oil. They're not even allowed to put that in their green can. Like it will cause for the truckload to get rejected at the facility. But here in Kern, we have a different situation here and you are allowed to put paper. So that's why I personally put a paper towel or napkins. You can put paper bags, you know, tin cups. They have things that they send home with you that are biodegradable, soiled paper. So you can put those things in the green.
Yeah, because I mean, there has been times when people have gone to the trash can and just dumped in a big pot of something like that where they didn't put it in a bag and all that and everything. I mean, I'm just wondering, you know.
And I understand. I mean,
Mhm.
I have the same thing.
Yeah,
I personally, with the green can, I mean, I would rather have my yard waste in there first because, you know, we have suggestions of putting like baking powder in the bottom. It's sticky, it's wet, you know, I like the absorption there. We have little smell good things that are available or they're available to buy, you know,
Okay.
it is. But
Council
I know
members,
food waste is not everyone's favorite, but
Yeah.
this is, this law is towards short-lived climate pollutants and food waste, unfortunately, is one of them.
Councilmember Espinoza, I think it's worth noting that American Refuge is proposing to make themselves available during this transitional period. Like I think we were talking about setting up an interim office or location in town so residents can have this kind of dialogue about their individual circumstances and talk through them. So tentatively, we're looking at having that set up at the old corporation yard.
yeah.
We wanted to be available for anyone from the city to ask questions in the public
Right.
workshop. I'm more than happy to do presentations. At Richland School District and Grimway, we've had very successful diversion programs.
Well, I think the kids are already geared that way, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, people laugh, but yeah, I do dumpster dive. I do get in the trash and I rip open trash because a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't have anything to recycle. And so I've done it at the school. I have presentations that I've done at Rotary and Kiwanis and different groups where, you know, I'll take a bag of trash from a family of 4 and rip it open and spread it out. And really, like, a lot of people have a big thing of organic. And, you know, you have more so of recyclable materials that can go away, but your trash is actually very small if you look at it. I mean, I only put my trash out maybe every 4th time. I just don't generate a lot of trash, but I also try and watch what I buy too, right? I'm a little weird about the recycling stuff, but I'm happy to show those visuals. I mean, I did it at Richland School District. I went over there when we first took over that account to show all the organics. I've done it at another school. And their business director was like, you're gonna do what? And I'm like, no, I'm gonna show you. And we did. Maria and I ripped open 3 bags and they're like, wow, we had no idea. And it's actually caused this whole thing of changing products on the front end of buying things, not styrofoam, that they can recycle. It can go into the compost.
It brings a question up for me. So if you have residents who are not putting the black and green out as often, and maybe the blue's coming out more, or vice versa. Let's just imagine, just like you said, you're putting your black out once a month versus once a week. If that's happening, are we tracking how much that home is generating or being picked up? And is that going to allow residents to have a lower bill?
No. How could you do
I'm
that?
asking, the question's going to come up. So I'm asking the question. I don't know if it's something that's, I mean, if you have someone who does not need to have trash thrown every single week, what does that look like for that person?
Well, technically with public health, like we have to service every week.
If they bring it out,
Yeah,
right?
they-
If they leave it where it's at and because they don't need to throw it, then technically you're not picking it up.
The one thing about that, Chad, is we still come every day, or we still come once a week. So if a person wants to go on vacation mode or something like that, that's perfectly fine. But for us to show up every day and go, yes, no, oh, we got there. It costs us almost $2 to get that truck in front of each house for each can. So I don't think it's, we're there, we're showing up for the job. And if someone chooses not to bring their can out, that's their own choice. But for us to go and start making discounts because of it, I don't think that's feasible. We do track what cans aren't out, because typically we get a call of, hey, you didn't dump my can. And so we want to make sure that when our truck goes by, all of our trucks have ongoing video. So we're videoing every truck, but our drivers also have a tablet with a camera so they can click off that can wasn't out and it wasn't serviced. So when the customer does call, our staff is already up on it. We have a picture of it and we can handle that.
It goes to customer service.
Well, and you could compare it to leaf pickup or even brush pickup. Not everybody uses it, and yet it is uniform billing. I mean, that's why, there's just no way you would sort
Shucks.
individually.
I don't need the blue can or the green can. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, see, I can see that too. That's what but it needs to be uniform all over. I mean, it has to be done. And I understand the reasoning behind it. It just, a lot of us don't like it, but we have to do it. I mean, I'm sorry, it's what we have to do.
And why are we eliminating the brush program? I know that's not you guys.
Well, with with the end of the city service, I mean, core city residents are paying for the benefit of the annual brush program through their current rates. So there's not a funding source as of right now with, if American were to be awarded the 3-cart service. So that's one challenge, is funding it. Another challenge is just the brush program. It's just becoming virtually impossible to manage effectively anymore. I mean, whether it's clogging an alley or clogging a curb and gutter during a recent rain, or whether we get sidetracked with navigating a storm or other more pressing issues, material can be stockpiled in front of a residence for days, weeks at a time. And really just feel like the most effective thing to do is to, for smaller materials, have them break it down and put it in the organics container, or take advantage of the landfill and self-haul, or use a contractor and then so they can more readily haul that material off. But and Mr. Gibson can attest, I mean, that we're open to abuse by providing a convenient service like that. And as you've seen, people will take advantage of corridors that aren't meant for brush, such as Tulare and Poplar. Alleys are not, we're not supposed to see brush in alleys, and material's not supposed to be commingled anymore. We can't have like palm leaves, for example, commingled with other organics, because the landfill's just not going to process it like they used to. So there's just more and more things every year to make it impossible for us to do that effectively anymore.
So this is the year to trim my tree.
I think people got
You're running
that
out of
message.
time, hun.
That stupid walnut tree. Dang it.
You're
I
just
have a
hauling
question,
away.
Jeff. Is this
Who's
kind
the
of like the end of what they're going to be asking, or is this the start of something that's a direction that they're heading? And this is just the
She really is.
first phase of it.
1383 was passed in 2016, so this isn't really anything new. I anticipate if people don't comply with 1383 and what we're supposed to be doing, not only on this end, but there's other ends that we have to be working on. I mean, through the city, not just recycling. I think changing buying practices and with food and food recovery. There's a lot of aspects to this. So if we don't make a valiant effort and start doing what they want, I think that they'll just turn down the screws on everybody, statewide.
Like these three categories that we're dividing everything into, There's not like a fourth one that they're gonna want, or a fifth one, or a sixth one.
Well, you know, there are jurisdictions that do have a 4-can system. Is that in 13E3? No. The reason why they've done it is because people were contaminating, right? So they'll have a separate paper one because of the contamination. So it's up more so in the Bay Area with split cans. But is it in the regs to have it for? No.
Okay.
But as Jeff said, you know, there's procurement targets put on the cities. There's paper, the paper the city buys. You actually have to keep receipts because it has to be of a certain percentage recycled content now in this. And I'm sorry, I don't always want to be the bearer of bad news to everyone. But, you know, as Jeff said, this did go into effect 2016. Or I said it was signed into law, went into effect 2020. And the last 2 years, I've actually sat, here's your law. I've sat on the regs because I felt it was important for me being from rural jurisdictions that we had a voice. You know, and there's other people in there trying to have a voice too. Did everything we want get put into these? No. But, you know, I wanted to make sure the state knew, like, yes, we do function in 110-degree weather. We have rural routes. We're not always, you know, down city streets. We have different challenges that we have to overcome here in the valley, right? I mean, another thing is a lot of the cities, you know, I think are going to try and dump a lot of their compost on the valley. But it's important that we also voice like what, and this is why I'm kind of saying, please use the soil paper product, because we have to think of our farmers here in the valley, like the compost that they're going to get, right? Whether it's certified organic, we don't want contaminants in there because then farmers might not want it. So I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible because I want to make sure that it is a full circle recycle. So, you know, as far as education and outreach, you know, I hope the city knows that we try and do everything we can to educate, you know, as far as doing a longer transition plan to help folks, we're all about that. I mean, it's helpful, you know, even when we do rollouts, we always staff up because people come out and have questions. And I want to have their questions. I want to know, you know, we have farmers markets that I attend with Maria and other staff. It's good to have that personal interaction because I want to know what their concerns are, what their questions are. I mean, Chad with the food waste. I mean, the weirdest one I got was someone asked if they could put a dead coyote in their organics.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't really know how to answer that because I didn't understand why you would have a dead coyote. That was a rude one, but you know.
Probably where it belongs. I mean, makes a little more sense.
You know,
Container.
Oh, no.
so, but
Oh.
I mean, I hope you know that we do like to do a lot of outreach. I do enjoy being out in the schools and educating our youth, what Brimway has done and what Richland has done. As Mayor has mentioned, like the kids know they're ready. I mean, this isn't something new to California. If anyone has traveled over to Pismo Beach, you're sorting. You've gone to Costco, you sort. So we are happy to help educate. I know that the food waste thing is tricky. I usually try to control this to where it is a one-on-one interaction. I don't normally disperse those because I think it's important that I do show people how to use the can, not just this one, but the 96. I know it's a big change for Chapter because, you know, we don't really have a mandatory blue card. So now we're doing 2 extras, but everyone will get it. It will just take time. And we're willing to do the footwork to help everyone.
One last thing to go back to one of your questions about the smell issue. The cans that we've picked to roll out here, these are toters. The city usually used RMI carts, older RMI carts, and it's RMI, not mine, but RMI carts. And the carts, we used to run RMI carts, but they weren't very airtight at the lid. And so if you did have something pretty rancid in there, we had one at our own house and it didn't last very long, especially the stuff that we had. And so we went to toter, which those are toters right there, and they have a ridge around them. But the can that we ended up going with is called a Sierra cart. And there's a truckload here already, but they have a larger ridge on them and they're airtight. So that way at these times when it's 100 degrees, you're not going to get any issues until you open up the cart. And yes, it will be rancid when you open the cart, but the cart just sitting there, it's not going to spread it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, sting coyote
I know,
smell.
I know,
Pick 'em up,
it's-
flip it around.
yeah.
Totally.
I'll make a lot of changes, believe me. Yeah. Well, what are we gonna do? We're having more discussion or are we?
So at this time, Mayor and Council, no, we will come back in January, January
Okay.
18th with the implementation, with the ordinance, with the resolution of intent and begin the process. We're going to post this information on our website with responses back out. We did tell the community that we would take their questions or
Right.
concerns, provide a response. We're going to do that. And at this point, we're looking, as Mike outlined in the schedule, come back to the January 18th meeting. That's where you'll see the ordinance, which we have to adopt first, along with the resolution of intent to award the contract to American Refuse.
I believe we appreciate everything that we've done up to this point, and I know you're familiar already what it's gonna take to get everybody on board. I mean, you can deal with 5 people, you can deal with 5,000 people, so, you know, we got a big job ahead of us, and, yeah, it'll work. We
And
just
what you'll
have to-
see is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we just have to make it work.
Is that we're going to present, as we did in the original workshop, is the staff's recommendation is to eliminate alley service with a hybrid model of phase in with a 1-year for alley service to allow some of the residents an opportunity to make whatever modifications. But incrementally, we'll start moving forward up to year, subject to Cal Recycling approving that plan. If they let us go up to that.
Yeah,
We're
no,
gonna
we can't
propose
forget that part. Yeah,
So, but that's what we're going to go with.
right. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
I'd like to say thank you, and I know we're both in the same boat. We're just coming at it from different angles, but we're both have to make this work. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And we love the questions and stuff. A lot of people,
Sure.
I felt like every time we've tried to go out to dinner, we get a lot of folks coming and talking to us. But it's okay. I feel like after we talk about it, we vent a lot of these issues, you know, and
Yeah.
everybody understands where we're at, you know, it brings us closer to accepting it.
Very
Okay.
popular now. Go out.
Yeah.
It's okay. We love this
Yeah.
town, and so we want to do everything we can.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay, I guess we're going to adjourn this meeting. Anyone have any other comments before we have the adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no.